He found her secret notebook while she was away and the pages destroyed everything he thought was real. A loose piece of paper. That is all it took. One single piece of paper that slipped out of a notebook, and a man's entire 15-year world came apart in the span of a few seconds. He was not snooping. He was not suspicious. He was just tidying up the house while his wife and kids were away on a trip, doing what any normal, present, caring husband would do. And then, without warning, he was reading something that no spouse should ever have to read. The details on that page were not vague. They were not something he could explain away. They were explicit, they were specific, and they were attached to a name he recognized. A man his wife followed on Facebook. A man who apparently posts about holy energy and spiritual wisdom. And written right there beside that name were 4 dates. The first one from exactly 1 year ago. Let that land for a second. A full year. 12 months of a secret that his wife carried with her every single day while he was right there in the same house. He and his wife had not shared a bedroom for roughly that same year. She had stopped being intimate with him. She had excuse after excuse, distant eyes and clipped sentences and the kind of tired that never seemed to go away no matter how much she rested or how quiet he tried to keep things around her. He probably gave her space. He probably told himself she was going through something and that the right thing to do was not to push, not to make her feel pressured, not to be the kind of husband who makes his wife struggles about his own needs. He was patient because he loved her and because patience is what you offer the person you have built a life with when they are struggling. And then one day she exploded over something completely absurd. She accused him of complimenting her sister. She declared she had completely lost all desire for him. She made such an enormous scene, her voice rising and her words landing hard and cold and deliberate, that he did not even bother defending himself, because the accusation was so ridiculous he assumed it would blow over on its own. He probably sat there quietly, maybe even apologizing for something he had not done, trying to smooth things over the way people do when they love someone and want the tension to leave the room. Now he knows the truth. That fight was never about a compliment. That fight was a constructed exit, a smokescreen, a way to manufacture distance and justify a coldness that was already there for a very specific reason. She needed him to feel like the problem. She needed him to feel like the one who had done something wrong, so that she could keep doing what she was doing without him ever asking the right questions. She handed him guilt like a gift, wrapped it up neatly, and watched him carry it around the house while she carried something else entirely. That is not just cheating. That is a level of calculated emotional manipulation that takes real effort to maintain. And here is what makes it even more gutting. This was not some secret she had buried deep. She wrote it down. In a notebook. In graphic detail. With dates. With his full name. Picture that for a moment, the deliberate act of sitting down with a pen and choosing to record what happened, choosing to describe it, choosing to give it permanence. She documented her affair like it was something to be preserved, something worth remembering, something she wanted to be able to return to on a quiet afternoon when nobody else was home. That is not the behavior of someone who is ashamed of what they did. That is not remorse. That is not confusion. That is the behavior of someone who treasured it, someone who wanted to hold on to it, someone who looked at what they had done and felt something closer to pride than regret. He mentioned in his edit that he does not even really know this man personally. The guy lives in a different city. She discovered him through Facebook, started watching his videos, probably found herself drawn in by whatever polished version of wisdom and warmth the man performed for an audience. At some point she began messaging him privately, that slow and deliberate crossing of a line that people always pretend happened accidentally. Then, when she went on a short trip alone last year, she used that opportunity to sleep with him. A trip, by the way, that he encouraged her to take so she could relax without the kids. He gave her the exact opportunity she used to betray him. He handed it to her with both hands because he loved her and wanted her to have peace. He probably felt good about it, felt like a thoughtful husband who understood she needed space. That is not just painful. That is the kind of irony that hollows a person out completely, that reaches into your chest and removes something that does not grow back the same way. Oh, I genuinely cannot process that. He told her to go. He was being a good husband. And she came back from that trip having slept with another man, and then sat across from him at the dinner table and said nothing. And then the same thing happened again this year. Another solo trip. Another opportunity that arrived gift-wrapped because her husband trusted her. He never worried because he had no reason to, or at least no reason he could have named or justified to himself. He trusted her completely. After 15 years together, after building a home and raising 2 children and sharing a bed and a kitchen and a life made of 10,000 ordinary moments, he trusted her completely. And she looked at that trust every single day and chose to exploit it, chose to treat his loyalty like a wall she could hide behind while she walked through a door he did not know existed. Let us talk about what this man is sitting with right now, because it is a lot. He is sitting in a house that still has his wife's things in it, her coffee cup probably still on the counter, her shoes probably still by the door, everything arranged exactly the way she left it when she walked out with the kids and kissed him goodbye like it was any other morning. His children are with her on a trip, probably laughing and eating something they love and having a completely normal day, completely unaware that their father is standing alone in the house holding something that is going to change all of their lives. And he is alone, in the quiet of a house that should feel familiar and safe, holding a piece of paper that has rewritten the last 12 months of his life in one sitting. Every argument that seemed strange now makes sense. Every moment she pulled away now has a reason. Every time he felt like something was off but could not name it, could not point to anything specific and feel justified in his worry, it turns out his instincts were right and he had been right all along. He just never imagined this was where the trail led. He probably never let himself imagine it, because imagining it would have felt cruel to her, and he did not want to be that kind of husband, the suspicious kind, the kind who accuses without proof. So he stayed quiet and trusting, and the cost of that trust is landing on him right now all at once. That is one of the cruelest things about discovering infidelity like this. It does not just hurt you in the present. It reaches backwards and poisons memories you thought were good. You replay conversations. You think about moments where she was distracted and staring past you and wonder where her mind really was. You think about nights she said she was tired and turned away and wonder who she had been with before she came home and climbed into that bed beside you. Every tender moment becomes a question mark. Every photograph becomes complicated. The good memories do not disappear, but they change shape, and the new shape is harder to hold. He says he does not know if he can even look her in the face when she gets back. He says he does not want to make a scene in front of the children. He says for the first time in his life he is completely lost. And the thing is, none of those feelings are weakness. All of them are completely rational responses to having the floor ripped out from under your feet without a single warning sign. He is not falling apart because he is fragile. He is falling apart because something real and enormous just collapsed, and that is the only reasonable thing a person can do in that moment. The man he mentions, the one she was writing about with such visible devotion and warmth on every line of that page, posts about spiritual energy and holiness and connection. He builds a public identity around being elevated, being wise, being someone who understands something the rest of us do not, someone whose words are worth following and whose presence is worth seeking out. People watch his videos and feel seen by him, feel like he is speaking directly to the part of them that is searching for something. And yet behind that curated image of goodness, he was sleeping with a married woman whose husband had no idea, a man who was back home encouraging his wife to rest and travel and take the space she needed. The husband probably saw one of this man's posts at some point, maybe even nodded along to something he said, having no idea what was actually happening. The irony of a man who presents himself as spiritually elevated being the person someone chose to have an affair with is, frankly, something else entirely. It is almost poetic in how ugly it is. What I keep coming back to is the notebook itself. The fact that she wrote it down. Not a text that could be deleted with a single tap. Not a message that disappears after 24 hours. A physical, handwritten record of what she was doing and who she was doing it with and how she felt about every single encounter. The pen moving across the page. The choice of which words to use. The choice to keep it. She wanted to remember this. She wanted it to exist somewhere outside of her own memory, somewhere she could return to it and relive it. That tells you something about how she actually felt about it. It was not a moment of weakness she regretted and wanted to forget. It was something she valued enough to document, enough to preserve, enough to carry around in a notebook in a house she shared with her husband and her children. I need a moment. I genuinely need a moment. She wrote down how wonderful it was and kept it in a notebook in their house. In their actual house. And the way it ended up in his hands was not even intentional on his part. He was cleaning. He was doing something ordinary and kind and domestic, the kind of thing a person does when they love the home they live in and want to take care of it. A loose sheet fell out. He was not looking for evidence. Evidence found him, slipping out from between the pages like it had been waiting for exactly this moment. Which means if he had not been tidying up that specific spot on that specific day, he might never have known. He might have continued waiting, as he said himself, until the end of the world, never understanding why she had grown so cold, never understanding why he felt like a guest in his own marriage, just quietly absorbing the distance and assuming the fault was somehow his. He deserves to know the truth. He deserves to make decisions about his life based on what is real, not on the version of reality she constructed for him, painted over the real one like a coat of careful and deliberate color. That reality she built was designed to keep him confused and self-doubting while she pursued something else entirely. No person who loves their partner builds that kind of elaborate fiction around them. No person who respects their family uses manufactured fights as emotional cover, weaponizes a compliment about a sister to create the impression of a husband who cannot be trusted. What she did was not a moment of weakness. It was a sustained, deliberate campaign of deception that lasted at minimum a full year and possibly longer, running quietly underneath the surface of every ordinary morning and every family dinner and every night he lay in a separate room wondering what he had done wrong. Here is where I land on this, and I want to be very direct. This woman did not accidentally fall into an affair. She cultivated it. She flew across the emotional distance between them and closed that distance with someone else while simultaneously engineering reasons for her husband to feel responsible for the gap. She went on trips that she used deliberately. She wrote down the details like they were something beautiful, something worth capturing in ink and keeping close. And she came home each time and said nothing, looked him in the eye and said nothing, let him feel guilty over a compliment to her sister and said nothing. That is not a mistake. That is a choice, made repeatedly, over a long period of time, by someone who knew exactly what they were doing and decided it was worth it anyway. He asked what he should do. And the honest answer is that there is no version of this where she can explain the notebook away. There is no version where 4 documented dates and graphic written descriptions of what she experienced somehow mean something other than what they clearly mean. He needs to speak to a lawyer before she gets home if he can. He needs to document what he found, photograph that page, keep it somewhere safe. He needs support from people who are on his side, not on the side of keeping the peace for the sake of appearances. His children deserve a father who is not slowly being destroyed from the inside by a secret he was never supposed to carry. And he deserves a life that is built on something real. What he had was not real. Not for the last year at minimum. But what comes next can be. 4 affairs, 1 wedding night, and the moment he finally stopped believing she could ever change. She slept with someone else the day after their wedding. One day. Their wedding was on a Saturday, or a Tuesday, or whatever day it was, and within 24 hours of standing at an altar and making vows in front of everyone they knew, she was with her ex. Let that sit for a second. Not a week later. Not a month later. The next day. But that is actually the 3rd item on a list that goes even further back, and by the time you hear the full picture of what this man uncovered on his wife's old phone, you will understand why he says his mind is broken. Because this is not a story about one bad decision. This is a story about a pattern so consistent, so relentless, and so calculated that it becomes almost impossible to comprehend how one person could sustain it. Let us start from the beginning because the timeline here matters enormously. These two had dated for 2 years before getting married. 2 years of shared history, of learning each other's routines and fears and soft spots, of building the kind of familiarity that makes a person feel like home. At some point during that time things fell apart badly enough that they separated, and the reason for the separation was that she became physically abusive toward him. Not an argument that got loud. Not a moment of emotional cruelty that left invisible marks. Physical. She was arrested for domestic violence against him. He had her bailed out of jail. He did that. He was the victim of her abuse, and he still showed up to bail her out, still chose her when he had every legal and moral reason not to. That alone would end most relationships permanently. For him it was a chapter they worked through. Over time they reconciled. And by his own account, the reconciliation was genuinely remarkable. She changed. She stopped her addictions. She became supportive and present and caring, the kind of present that you can actually feel in a room, the kind of caring that makes you believe the worst version of a person was never the real one. She became the person he had originally fallen in love with, and everything started to feel real and good and worth fighting for. He believed in her completely. He looked at who she had become and decided that surviving the worst of her was proof of something worth protecting. He trusted that what they had built together after all of that was stronger for having been tested. They made a commitment to each other built on radical honesty. No more hiding. No more secrets. Open communication as the foundation of their marriage going forward. That was the agreement. That was the deal they shook on before they walked down the aisle together. And she looked him in the eye and agreed to every word of it. She stood there and made that promise with her whole face, with her voice, with whatever expression a person wears when they are asking someone to trust them completely. She was already cheating by then. April of last year. She was pregnant with his child. They were having a baby together, which means he was probably doing all the things expectant fathers do, thinking about names, thinking about the future, feeling the particular kind of tenderness that comes with knowing something new and irreversible is on the way. And while she was carrying that pregnancy, she was also sleeping with another man and texting that man to ask whether the baby might be his. She was not just cheating. She was sitting with the possibility that the child her husband was preparing to become a father to might not be his, and she was asking her affair partner about it through text messages that she apparently forgot were still on an old phone. She was carrying two realities at the same time and her husband was only allowed to see one of them. I do not have words strong enough for this. I genuinely do not. She miscarried. And that is a tragedy, full stop. Whatever else is true about her, losing a pregnancy is real pain and it deserves to be named. He almost certainly held her through that. He almost certainly sat with her in whatever quiet, heavy grief follows a loss like that, absorbing her pain as his own, showing up as the partner you are supposed to be in the darkest moments. But 1 month after that miscarriage, in May, she slept with her ex-boyfriend. Her husband did not know. He was presumably still in that tender, careful space of supporting her through grief, being present, being the partner she needed him to be, while she was managing a second secret relationship on the side. Then comes the wedding. July. They stood in front of their families and their friends and whatever officiant led them through their vows, and they promised each other everything. Picture that room. The people who came from wherever they came from to witness this, the effort of putting something like that together, the weight of what those words are supposed to mean when you say them out loud in front of everyone who loves you. And then she manufactured a fight at their own wedding reception. She created conflict on the day they were supposed to be celebrating the beginning of their life together, injected drama into a room that was supposed to hold only joy, and then used that conflict as cover to exit and sleep with her ex the next day. She built an argument on her wedding day specifically so she would have a reason to not be with her husband. That is not impulsive. That is planned. He filed for divorce not long after, and the genuinely stunning part is that he filed without knowing about any of this. He filed because of how she was behaving, the constant fighting, the erratic energy, the patterns that felt impossible to live with. His instincts were screaming that something was wrong even though he could not name what it was. He just did not know the actual shape of what that something was. They came back together in September. They tried again. They were rebuilding. And she was sleeping with a man she had introduced to him as her cousin. Someone they spent time with together, side by side, in the normal rhythms of everyday life. Someone he had conversations with, shared space with, laughed around, treated like a trusted person in their extended circle without a single reason to think otherwise. And that person was sleeping with his wife for 3 consecutive months while sitting across from him at tables, while exchanging pleasantries, while looking him in the eye the way people do when they have nothing to hide. 3 months. 12 or 13 weeks of that man knowing exactly what he was doing and choosing to keep doing it. That level of deception requires a kind of compartmentalization that most people simply cannot understand. To look at your husband, and then look at the man you are sleeping with behind his back, and then sit between them as if everyone in the room is exactly who they say they are, that is not an accident. That is a skill set. And it is a horrifying one. He finally confronted her on the 1st of May this year. She did not gaslight him. She did not deny it. She broke down and admitted everything and apologized in a way that he describes as the one time he actually felt genuine remorse from her. And that detail is the most painful part of all. Because he could feel that it was real. The remorse was real. After 4 documented affairs spanning over a year of their relationship, the apology finally felt honest. And it does not matter. It cannot matter. Because the damage is not a misunderstanding or a lapse in judgment. It is 4 separate decisions, made in 4 separate moments, across 4 separate partners, some of whom he knew personally, one of which happened the day after they were married. She still believes they can make this work. She said that. Even after admitting everything, even knowing what she put him through, she said she believes they can fix it. And I think part of what makes that so painful is that somewhere inside him there might be a tiny voice that wants to ask the same question. Because he loved this woman through things that most people would not survive. He stayed through abuse. He stayed through addiction. He believed in her transformation with everything he had. He did everything. That is not his self-pity speaking. That is the record. He was there for her addiction. He was there for her family crises. He bailed her out of jail when she was arrested for hurting him. He kept the faith when every rational signal said to walk away. And what he got in return was a pregnancy she was not certain was his, 3 affairs in the months surrounding their wedding, and a 4th with someone he trusted as a friend of the family. He wrote something at the end of his post that stopped me completely. He said he cannot stop crying and he cannot stop hurting and he has 0 hope, but he is still going to keep going forward because he has nothing else to do but move. And then he spoke directly to whoever might be reading, whoever else might be sitting in that same devastation, and he told them it is not the end, that there is always something to look forward to stay strong and keep faith and love yourself. He is broken and he is still trying to pass something useful on to someone else who might need it. That takes a specific kind of person. Here is my verdict, and I want to be clear about it. This is not a situation where she had a moment of weakness and made a terrible choice. This is a documented series of betrayals that she executed across multiple relationships, one of which happened while she was pregnant with what might or might not have been his child, one of which happened during a reconciliation built on a promise of honesty, and one of which happened the literal day after they exchanged vows. The pattern does not lie. Each affair was preceded by a manufactured reason to create distance or conflict, and each one was concealed behind a version of herself she was performing for her husband while she was someone else entirely with other people. He gave her every possible chance a human being can give another human being. He stayed through abuse. He stayed through addiction. He came back after divorce proceedings. He trusted the cousin. He believed in the new version of her because he wanted it to be true and because she made it look true. None of that is weakness. All of it is love. But love without honesty in return is not a relationship. It is a performance with a one-person audience, and he was the only one who did not know he was watching a show. He needs to let this one go. Not because she is beyond forgiveness, because forgiveness is something he can arrive at privately, in his own time, for his own peace. But because reconciliation requires two people who are both operating in reality, and she has demonstrated across 4 separate documented occasions that she is capable of running a completely parallel life while standing directly next to him. Remorse does not erase architecture. And she built something elaborate. The kindest and truest thing he can do for himself now is believe her record instead of her apology. His record is full of love and loyalty and endurance. Hers tells a different story. He deserves someone whose record matches his. Drop a comment below and tell me which story hit you harder, because both of these are a lot to carry. If this video got to you, a like and a subscribe means everything, and it genuinely helps this channel keep going.